Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 14 of Conservation Conversations with BirdLife South Africa. I'm your host, Christina Hagen, coming to you live from Cape Town. We have over 150 episodes recorded and available on YouTube, so if you've missed any of them, you can catch up on our YouTube channel. We are on all major social media channels, and you can use the hashtag Conservation Conversations to let us know what you think of the show. We aim to keep these webinars free for all to learn and enjoy, so if you do enjoy the series and can contribute, no matter how small an amount, please do consider donating. You can do so through the BirdLife South Africa directly, either by scanning the QR code on the screen or going to the link also shown on the screen. Otherwise, you can EFT BirdLife South Africa directly and use the reference webinars and your name. And we are so grateful to those of you who continue to support us. Now we are again running a donation competition with the amazing Ultimate Companion to Birding in Southern Africa as the prize. And we are very grateful to Peter and Irene Ginn for donating these books. So if you donate at least 100 Rand, you will be entered into the draw for one of the two books, and each multiple of 100 Rand that you donate gets you another entry. And this, unfortunately, the prize is only available to South African residents. We are coming to an end of the competition, so you still have another week and a bit or a week and a day to get your donations in. The donation competition will end on the 31st of July, and I will announce the winner at the 6th of August webinar. So please do get those donations in if you are able to support. And the annual BirdLife South Africa raffle is also live, and you can stand a chance to win an amazing 8-day, 7-night birding trip for two to Brazil. And what a bucket list birding location that is. You can visit our website at www.birdlife.org.za/raffle for more. So tonight we're featuring another citizen science project after the car count webinar of last time. This time it's about the Southern African Bird Atlas Project, or the SABAP. We're with Tania Anderson. So Tania Anderson is a keen citizen scientist and photographer, and she's been the part-time SABAP2 coordinator for just over a year. She practices as a freelance ecologist with expertise in arid area ecology and plants. She has participated in white-backed vulture and lesser flamingo conservation projects, the only two birds that she is sure she can identify correctly. I'm sure that's not true, Tania. She serves on the BirdLife South Africa Flamingo Research and Conservation Group and helps out as a BirdLife South Africa volunteer whenever she can. And we are very grateful for all your support, Tania. So you may switch on and start sharing your screen.
Great, thanks, Christina. So thanks very much, Christina, for the opportunity and the pleasure to talk to everybody tonight about the Southern African Bird Atlas Project 2. And hello to everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. It's so good to see so many very regular, long-term and addicted atlases joining us tonight. So I hope that you can learn something from this presentation. So basically, SABAP2 is a truly amazing citizen science bird monitoring project that maps the distribution of bird species in Southern Africa. It started 17 years ago now already, and it has built upon SABAP1, which was undertaken from 1987 to 1992. And that project resulted in one of the most impressive bird books that was ever produced, and that was the Atlas of the Southern African Birds, which was published in 2 large volumes. SABAP2 relies on a robust and a repeatable protocol, which is known as BirdMap, and it allows insight into the distributions of the Southern African birds, as well as their conservation. Now, it would not be here if it was not for the energy of almost 3,000 dedicated birders who tirelessly atlas. They go out there in their own time and their own energy and at their own costs and collect records for us. And this project is totally dependent on the participation of all these keen birders. Now, some enthusiasts are so passionate and so addicted that they will even record birds while they're out running. So I've heard of a couple that go out on the trail run and then they will be recording birds as they go. And possibly some of you tonight that are watching are some of those. You know who you are. And since 2007, more than 22 million records of birds have been collected and have been mapped. And that is, at this stage, we are actually getting another 1.2 million records every year. And the total number of cards or lists that have been received is around about 700,000. So that's quite incredible. Now, why Atlas, you may ask? And so many of you already know all about birding, you love birds, you love photography, and the next step on the bird ladder is to actually atlas, if you're not doing so already. So you will discover that you will get to places that you might never have seen before. You will also find out that birds can be very funny, entertaining, they can be quarrelsome, they can be serene, they can be profoundly human. And watching the birds and then recording where they are invites us to experience the natural world in very special ways. And you may even discover that if you're out in a group busy atlasing or birding, that it could be quite entertaining to watch the rest of the birders. Atlasing is also really good for our mental well-being. There's a book out called Ornithology, which actually talks all about the psychological and mental well-being benefits of birding and also atlasing or contributing to and doing birding with a purpose. You connect to nature, and the studies, there's quite a number of studies that actually show that if you even just walk through the city park, you can decrease your stress and you improve your long-term mental health by doing so. But even more so if you're atlasing, because this needs concentration and focus and so on. So it involves your mind a lot more. And then birds are also very accessible and they're equitable because they're everywhere. So even if you're in the cityscape, you will find that you'll see doves, you'll see hawks, you'll see falcons, you'll see a lot of action. Then there's a exercise too. If you're out there just walking regularly, you could go out birding in the morning and the evening. So you're getting these little snacks of exercise while you're birding, which is also very useful if you don't normally exercise. And you'd often find that, like, if you're going after a bird in the bush, and you will walk much further than you even realize because you want to find that bird and you want to tick it. So exercise is involved in atlasing too. Then it's very intellectually stimulating. You need to focus, carefully concentrate. Identifying bird requires really careful attention to the details of the bird, and so that you can tell the one bird apart from the other. It's also very healing. A study has found that just being near birdsong can improve your mental well-being and can decrease depression. And this could also save your life eventually. It contributes to science, and science, and particularly the SABAP data, is used for research around the globe. Scientists use it to calculate where species are, and they create dynamic range maps where they occur. And they can calculate if a species is spreading or it's changing its migration patterns. We'll talk about that a bit more just now. And then it's also social, it's competitive. Some people are very competitive about it, see how many birds they can atlas in a pentad. And it can be fun and challenging. It also helps with the state of our environment, or at least to tell us about the state of our environment. Birds tell us about the state of our environment. For example, vultures, one of the most endangered groups of birds, disappear from an area when the human impacts are too great. So if you go into those areas, you don't see vultures. That's an indicator of the state of the environment. Then Atlas helps birds. And we know birds are the canaries in the coal mine, literally, and they indicate the health of our ecosystems. And a healthy natural ecosystem underpins our health and our prosperity. And we are all responsible for maintaining the ecosystems. So we also need to give back and we need to pay forward. And then it boosts the local economy and it boosts tourism. There's a lot of aviatourism. We're all aware of that and all the aviatourism work that BirdLife South Africa does, for example. And then, of course, atlasing and birding brings joy and inspiration. And I'm so very grateful for all the special birding moments that I've experienced and the joy that it has brought me. And so because of this, I want to make a difference and I want to help protect birds, but not only because I get something out of it, but also because they have just as much a right to exist as what we do. Okay, now, without the approximately 3,000 citizen scientists that we have that are contributing to this project, there wouldn't be the SABAP2. So their contribution and efforts are critical. SABAP2 is managed by the FitzPatrick Institute of African Ornithology and BirdLife South Africa, and it is also part of the overall African Bird Atlas project, which reaches over the whole of Africa. And a number of countries are participating. The SABAP2 database supports all the work and the data from the rest of the African countries as well. The steering committee is the non-remunerated committee, which oversees the project. We've got 12 members, and the representatives are mainly from the FitzPatrick Institute, BirdLife South Africa, SANBI, which is South African National Biodiversity Institute, BirdLife, Henk Nel, who developed the app, and representatives of some of the core users, like SEEK, Center for Statistics in Ecology, the Environment and Conservation at UCT, and the University of Witwatersrand, and the regional Atlas committees. And each province in South Africa has a regional Atlas committee, shall mention now. The management team for SABAP2 comprises of 2 part-time people linked to the FITS, and then 2 people at BirdLife South Africa who are participating and supporting the SABAP program. And then the regional Atlas committees. So each province has a regional Atlas committee, and they're in charge of ensuring that the data collected is correct, and that if there are any unusual records, they are verified. They also help to market, promote SABAP, encourage people, teach people how to Atlas as well. And we have 23 volunteers on our regional Atlas committees. And then we have a National Atlas Committee. We have 10 volunteers serving on the National Atlas Committee. And this committee is there for any new species that we discover on our shores, and then they will verify those and process those, and then will ensure that they get into the database. So the citizen scientists record their sightings of birds that are seen or heard within pentads. Now, a pentad is a geographical grid cell or a unit that is about 9 kilometers long by 8 kilometers wide in southern Africa, or a 5 by 5 minute latitude longitude. And it has to be recorded within these grid cells. And then the data that's collected is incredibly valuable for many reasons, which I'll go into. But basically, the protocol is just a summary of the protocol, and the atlases that are listening tonight know very well what it's all about. Bird species lists are collected by scientists within a pentad, and if you're not sure about the bird, the rule is to leave it out if you doubt. You record every bird you see once and in the order that you see or you hear them. And each list should be from a minimum of 2 hours of active birding to a maximum of 5 days for the preferred full protocol format, and to cover all habitats in the pentad if it is possible. Sometimes it's not possible to access some parts of a pentad, but the best is to try and get to where you can. And then if the lists do not meet full protocol requirements, then it is called an ad hoc. And then before you actually submit your list, it's best to check through the list to see that there are no finger errors, and then submit it to SABAP2. Now, this diagram is pretty complicated. I'm just going to run through it quickly. So let's get the laser. So basically what happens is an observer collects the bird data using the SABAP2 protocol, and then this is submitted to SABAP2. There are two ways, preferably through the mobile apps, which is far easier, or you can go straight to the website and upload it manually into a form. The mobile app, the data goes through to the mobile app database, and that's fed directly to BirdLife South Africa, which uses the data for conservation decisions and a whole lot of research and so on. And it also goes through to UCT's servers at the FitzPatrick Institute, and where there's an automatic data filter that first verifies the data coming in against the 40 years of multiple bird monitoring projects data that already exists. So that new records are verified first through the filter, and if everything's good, it goes through to the database. And if not, if they're unusual records, they will result in a regional rarities notification and form that you need to fill in, or an outer range form when some of the birds are out of range, or a national rarities form. If you get the out of range form, I'll talk about that a bit later too, you fill it in and you submit it, and it goes to the regional atlas committees, who will assess it and evaluate, and they will accept or reject the record. If you get a regional rarities, it goes to the committees as well. And if you get a national rarities, that will go via the form, the data will go to the National Atlas Committee, who will assess it. And then that will all feed back into the database, the accepted records. And then, what we get from the database is open access, access to maps and to data which you can download. And that all feeds into a whole lot of research that I'm going to tell you about, and a whole lot of purposes. Yeah, so that's essentially that. Now, if you have a look at this map, this is a map just to show you what you will see if you go onto the SABAP2 website. Just put the pointer off. Yeah, so this map indicates all the years of atlasing in one map for Southern Africa, and every little block is a pentad, and you can zoom into the map, and then you will see areas with darker colored blocks. That all the darker colored blocks of pentads have got more records and have been atlased more frequently, and all the light ones, these gaps over here, have got no records whatsoever, and then the lighter colored ones have got some records, so you can see which pentads need atlasing. Then you can click on a pentad and you can zoom in, and you will see just a single pentad. And then if you actually double click on the pentad, you can go in and you can have a look at the pentad in detail. You can view it in the normal map or satellite map. And here I've got an example of Skukuza in the Kruger National Park to show you the area for the pentad. And if you go below the map, you can find all sorts of information about that pentad. You get the species list, you can see species records by month, you can see the observer summary, who all have atlased in that pentad, you can see all the cards, and you can actually download the data for the pentad as well. Now, to look quickly at the value of your data. So this is an example of how BirdLife South Africa uses the data. They get the accurate spatial data from SABAP2 data and BirdLife data, and then apply science to it, analyses, and if you have very accurate spatial data, you will have a good science proceeding from that. And then with the science, they identify biodiversity hotspots or essential sites for birds. And as a result of that, you can have protected areas declared. And so far, over 200,000 hectares of private land have been protected by BirdLife South Africa since 2021, based on SABAP2 data, and forms part of the science that feeds into the action to conserve these habitats. So it is very useful data. Now there's some more of the value. These are some of the results from all the data as well. There are a lot of scientific papers that come out of it. It's used by scientists across the world. The distribution data has been used in a wide variety of papers, from illustrating patterns of taxonomic relationships to the impacts of climate change on our birds. And the bird field guides use the maps to illustrate bird distributions. And here's just a couple of examples that I've pasted here. There's checklists, there's very recent checklists of reserves, of areas, and lovely Magaliesberg Biosphere, Birds of the Magaliesberg Biosphere ebook, which is really wonderful to access with amazing information and all based on the SABAP2 data. And in a recent review of how SABAP2 project has been used, the authors found that over 700 articles that would either use the data or refer to the Atlas project, ranging from media, from websites, books, environmental impact assessments, and over 150 peer-reviewed scientific articles have been produced already. And that was done in, I think, 2022. So since then, we've got a whole lot more. So a lot of these publications are available on the SABAP2 website. You can go to the link and we can post the link for you later, and you can see a whole lot of these resources. Then a very critical and important use of SABAP2 data that is ongoing now for the last few years is the Red Data Book of Birds, or the new Red Data Book of Birds for South Africa, Lesotho, and Eswatini. This is the red listing process to assess the changes in the population and the distribution of species, and being worked on really hard by BirdLife South Africa. And this information all feeds into the global assessment and status of birds. And that also feeds into the state of the world's birds, for example. So this all is very good baseline scientific information that gets fed into global information. And this is just an example of one of the infographics that you would see in the State of the World Birds report. Okay, and then here's an example of a graph that has been made for red data listing specifically, and it's a visualization of the potential range change of lesser flamingo based on SABAP2 data. So I'm not going to explain everything about it, but it just shows you what can be produced with the data and what is being produced with the data to help with the red data assessments of our species. And then a really fun analysis of the data and a fun way of presenting data has been done by Alan Lee of BirdLife South Africa, and he's been producing violin plots to show how the relative abundance of a species is in context to species around it, and to see how you can actually analyze this sort of data. So what he has shown, for example, is for the dark-capped bulbul, very common species. And he says that fittingly for birds in the South Africa context, the most widespread and the noisy birds more resemble the shape of a vuvuzela when you plot their sequence index, their relative abundance, which is really very interesting, noisy vuvuzela. And then another one is the white-winged flufftail, which comes out in a really strange shape, almost sort of like a saddle. And he says that there are unique shapes, and those that are due to small ranges and only small sample sizes have unusual shapes, as special or interesting as the birds that make them. And you need to look out for this interesting article in the July SABAP newsletter, because there's a whole lot of other interesting shapes that the violin plots make for our birds. And then another interesting study that's just recently been completed is a study on how our South Africans perceive and value the cultural ecosystem services provided by birds. This was done by Sage Naidoo of the University of the Witwatersrand. And she found that very interesting observations about the values of the values that South Africans have for their avian cohabitants. And the more appealing species like orange-breasted sunbird, malachite kingfisher received unanimous positive responses, and the infamous pest species like hardy ibis or common myna received mixed to negative responses. But what came out of this was a lovely index on the cultural ecosystem services across the country. and it shows you how the cultural values differ across the landscape. Now, if you're keen to get involved, and I really hope you are, if you're not already involved, you can go to the SABAP2 website and you click on the tab, how to participate, and then that will tell you how to register and tell you a little bit about it. And then you go to the register tab and then you fill in the registration form and you will receive a citizen science number. And once you've got that, then you need to go and download BirdLife, the BirdLife or the Bindo mobile app. It's easy, free from Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. And these apps make it so much easier to atlas now. If you talk to any of the atlases who did SABAP1, they tell you it was such hard work to determine where to go, looking at maps, having to fill in the forms manually. But now the app actually does everything for you. So you just have to make sure that you have to enter, when you set up your app, go into atlasing, enter your observer number or your citizen science number and put it into atlasing mode when you get started, so that the app knows that you are an atlaser. And the same for Bindo. It is a little bit different. You're setting up your profile, but you also need to put in your citizen science number. And then when you start your lists, you have to say that you're atlasing. Now, while you're out there atlasing, the app will be automatically recording where you are, how much time you spent actively birding, and when the new list needs to be started. And you can look at a map and you'll see which pentad you're in and exactly where you are. There'll be a little blue dot showing your location. So all you have to do is type in the names of the birds, where you see them, when you see them, so that you can record them exactly where you see them. And then when you're done with your card, you submit it to SABAP2. So it's very simple and easy. Sometimes it takes a little bit of effort to get going, but once you're going, it's really easy. Now, it's really important for everyone to remember that we need to be safe when we're out atlasing, because it's not always safe. There's some areas that aren't safe, and you don't want to get into a predicament where you're robbed of your gear or anything. So always try and be safe when you're atlasing, and it's best to actually go with friends, and also to be aware of your surroundings, because we're focusing on the birds or on your phone while you're recording. So always be aware of your surroundings. And it's a whole lot more fun if you're actually sharing your atlasing experience, and it increases the joy of birding, and social connection makes it a whole lot more fun. There are a whole lot of sub-projects, which I can't really go into this evening, but you can find out about them on the website, which are targeting specific areas where the pentads need to be atlased. And I think there's probably about 12 across the country. So you can join up and join people in targeting those areas in the sub-projects, which is great. And then you can also find out from your bird clubs, if you belong to a bird club, or if you don't, find out from the bird clubs if you can join or go out atlasing with those people who atlas. There are quite a lot of members from bird clubs that are atlasing. So that is a good way to get going as well. And now that you've atlased, you need to go onto the website and you need to go and have a look at your data, because this is a lot of fun. And what you need to do is logged in under your name. Under your name in that tab, you will find my data. You go in there and you will see a map, and that will show you all the pentads that you've atlased. And then you can also click on the pentads and you can see more info about each one, and you can see a whole list of your cards and records, and below the map you'll also find out all the other information about your atlasing. But sometimes we will find that you get an off, and you will be emailed this form that looks like this. But never fear, it's not a problem. And these are really, really important records. So any records that are flagged as out of range are returned to you via email, and there's a request for further information to confirm the species identity. And observers then have to respond to the query by filling in the out of range form. And some of these species will be considered regional rarities. So then you will get a similar form, except it will have a different color at the top. Then you fill out the form, and then that's evaluated by the Regional Atlas Committee members I spoke about earlier. And they also often ask the local experts when needed and assess the merit of the record, and then they will flag it as verified or rejected. And if you're lucky, you will get a national rarity form, and that's if you see a very special, very rare bird on our shores or a brand new species coming into the country. And that will be assessed by the National Atlas Committee. So these records are very important because they may indicate changes in the species' range, and you may be the very first one to record this. So please do submit your ORFs. And this is an example of the form you'll see when you click through the email or you go onto this website and look under your profile. You will find the form. You just have to fill in you have to answer 3 questions, fill in a bit of data there. If you have a photograph, fantastic, add the photo because that helps a lot. And then you must remember to save and submit the form. Now we have a lot of social media presence. We've got a Facebook group, which is very active, and good tips and info are posted there. People post about their atlasing experiences, atlasing bashes, news. There's all sorts of documents there, links to videos and so on. So please go and have a look at the Facebook group. And then we've got an Instagram group too, which gives a bit more info on research, and it's not so much social side of things. We also have a SABAP newsletter, which comes out twice a year. The next one will be out very soon. And there's wonderfully interesting stories about Atlas experiences, about Atlas bashes and the research that's been done and milestones reached by our top atlases. So please look out for those. There's also a page in the African BirdLife magazine that comes out 6 times a year, and that gives you all sorts of information about SABAP, how it's progressing. There's the latest one talks about the new rarities committees, there was a bit of a change in our rarities committees. And then we also have an email list which sends out newsletters. It sends out the SABAP news, and it sends news out about Atlas bashes or any outings and that kind of news. So if you do want to get an email about what's happening, you can send me an email at sabap2 birdlife.org.za, and then I can add you to that email list. So for those of you that do Atlas, I want to say thank you so much for atlasing. Without you, there wouldn't be all this data, and we wouldn't have all the value and the conservation action that's been taken. And thank you so much too to all the RACs that help assess and verify records. It's very important that it is accurate, the data is accurate. And to those of you who don't Atlas yet, we need you. We need you. Once you start atlasing, you will experience the magic of atlasing like those who Atlas already do. And I encourage you then to join the atlasing family, pick up your binoculars, go watch some birds, record what you see, and embark on this adventurous, enriching journey that will also contribute to bird conservation, to science, and to society. And do feel free to use the data for research, for whatever research you'd like to do. There's so much more that can be done with it. And yeah, I've just included a few links for you to find out more. If you'd like to find out more, there are a whole lot of videos on the website under the resources tab. There are a lot of stories there. There are the checklists. And then you can also look at videos on the YouTube channel about the value of your contribution. There's more videos about that. How to use BirdLife, for those of you who don't know how to use it. And then, yeah, a whole lot more information. And feel free, if you're stuck, if you need any support, to contact me at SABAP2 birdlife.org.za, and I can help you out. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tania. Maybe you just want to leave that last slide up for a second, if you can go back so people can see those links again.
Okay, sure.
but I'll also try and post them in the chat box just now while we're getting on to some questions. But yeah, thank you so much for that great webinar, which explained all the details that people need to know about atlasing. And it's great to see some of the work that's being done with the data. So I just wanted to remind everyone before we go into some questions that we will be back in 2 weeks' time. So on the 6th of August with another Conservation Conversations webinar. And that one will be given by my colleague, Eleanor Vederman, who will be talking about the work she's doing setting up automated penguin monitoring systems to help with our African penguin conservation work. So please do join us then. So on to some questions. There are a couple coming in, and just to remind everyone to please put your questions in the Q&A box rather than in the chat feed, as it's gets hard to monitor the chat feed. So if you have put a question there, please do put it in the Q&A feed. So Glenda Williams-Wynn has asked says, I tried to do an atlas, tried to do a card for the pentad I live in once a month. Is that helpful, or does it skew the data with too much information in one pentad while surrounding pentads have minimal information?
It is very helpful. It won't skew the data because it's great to often know how the birds are moving through that area, you know, with seasonal changes and so on. So you can never have too much data for a pentad. But it also would be great if you can expand and have a look at the pentads around there. You know, if there are any that have very few records, that would be great. But it's wonderful. You keep atlasing your same pentad if that's all you can do. Well, we need all that data.
Yeah, that's great. So then the next one is from Anne Todd, who asks, what is the value of ad hoc submissions compared to full protocol?
Okay, so full protocol are better because normally you've recorded as many species as possible over the time. You know, after 2 hours, we've got most of the species that are probably in that pentad. So they are more valuable because of you've got a better idea of the species diversity. But the ad hoc protocols are also valuable because sometimes you just encounter a threatened species and it's just 1 or 2 recorded, but it's useful because it's a threatened species. And there are threatened species causes, and so logging that information is very useful for threatened species. And some of our scientists have also used ad hoc protocol data to analyze and to predict and model occupancy of where the birds occur. So it's useful for that as well. So don't think ad hoc isn't useful. It is also useful.
Great, thanks. And Penny Abbott asks, is it advisable to join in atlasing if you're not a particularly good birder or not too confident about IDs?
I think you should, what you should do is you should use BirdLife, you should start lists, and only when you're more confident that you actually identifying 90% of the birds, I'd say, then you should submit those to SABAP2. But it's also really good to go out with experienced atlases and experienced birders because you'll learn a lot from them as well. So yeah, once you're confident, I'd say submit. If you're not confident, as I mentioned, if you're in doubt, you should leave it out, you know. But then what you can also do is you could, if you're with experienced atlases, they'll help you identify the bird too. That will help. And you can also actually log it as an unidentified bird, and then you can go and check and see what you think it, you know, try and identify it with your bird book or whatever, and come back, and then you can actually edit that record and say you've got the name for it. So so you can also do those unidentified loggings in the meantime, you know, and then go back and put a name in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I read somewhere in the documentation that you should be confident about identifying about 90% of the species found in the area.
Yeah.
So what I tend to do is I have mostly birded in the Western Cape. So if I'm anywhere in the Western Cape, I'm pretty confident. If I travel elsewhere, I tend not to submit atlas cards until I'm a bit more sure on the species in those areas.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for the next one. So then Rocco Nell asks about saffron data and whether that's related to SABAP or included in SABAP.
No, the saffron is a separate project, so it's not linked directly to SABAP, but it is also managed by the FitzPatrick Institute at UCT. The database sits there, and yeah, there are a few people helping with that, but it is separate to SABAP2.
Yeah. So for those who aren't aware, saffron is the ringing database. So if you find or see a bird that has been ringed, then you can note down the number and send that through to saffron. And that's also a very valuable contribution to know how birds are moving around and what their survival rates are. So Peter Law asks, can we have some info on Bindo? And I know that's possibly not familiar to many people, as it is a relatively new app.
Yes, yeah. So if you can email me, then I'll send you the email address of the Bindo app support. If you go, I think the web address is Bindo app. It's just like www.bindo.app, something like that. So and then they've got all the information about the app and so on. I just know a little bit about it, but I can't really give you a lot of detail. So it's quite a bit more of a social app, and you can see what your friends are logging and atlasing as they go, and you can see a map of their observations as well. So there's more sharing involved with Bindo. But it also feeds into, as I said, the SABAP2 Atlas database. If you switch on the atlasing function, but you have to go, and for each card you have to say whether you're atlasing or not. So you can have lists or cards where you're not atlasing as well, and share that. Yeah, so I think it works a bit differently in that sense. And then it also includes a whole lot of photographs of birds. So you can actually, as well as linking to the data of birds in the area you're atlasing in. So if you go in, you could see, oh, maybe, these are the birds I can see in this area. It helps a bit with that. So you can use those photographs to ID birds in the area you're atlasing. Yeah, so essentially that's the difference with Bindo. It's new, but there are a lot of people using it already, and there's quite a bit of data coming in now into the SABAP2 database from Bindo.
Oh, that's great. Great to hear. Christo Finter says, will additional observers get credit for the cards that they assisted with?
They don't. It's just the person who entered it into their profile. They can be listed as additional observers, but they don't get credit for it. It doesn't count as a full protocol for them.
Yeah, but they are. You just need to make sure the person that is keeping the list adds you as an additional observer.
Yes, yeah. No.
Sorry, I've just lost the next question. From John Horrocks, asks a very important question, I think. Do you have to move around in the pentad, or can I atlas from my chair on the patio in the bush house?
You need to actually move around because you've got to try and cover all the habitats. So unless you're in a pentad where it's all just bush and there's no, the habitat's very homogeneous, there's nothing different, then you may get quite a lot of species if you're sitting long enough in your chair that are coming past. But I think you seldom have that situation where there's only one large, similar habitat across the whole pentad. So you do need to move around to get to the different habitats within the bush. I mean, you could have a little pan there or a little stream or something, and it's going to be something different there. So yeah, you do need to try and cover the whole pentad.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question from Penny Abbott, asking if you can talk a little bit more about the sub-projects and whether there are regional coordinators who can recommend pentads to Atlas.
Yes, yeah. So there are 12. I think there's 3 or 4 in Mpumalanga, in Limpopo has. The Northern Cape has one in the Bushmanland area. I know that's a fairly new sub-project, and that is an area that has large gaps. So that really needs a lot of, we need people to go out there in Atlas, although it is difficult. It's far and it's quite remote. But there on the website, you'll find a tab to see the sub-project. There's a tab for sub-projects, and each sub-project has got its own page, and there you will see there's the coordinators mentioned, or the emails mentioned there of who you can contact to find out how to get involved, and you can always contact them, and they can let you know if they're going to do sort of an Atlas bash in the area, or how you can actually contribute to the sub-project. We do need more, so if anybody's keen to start another, you're welcome to do so. Target an area. Don't choose a huge area with too many pentads, because it gets really complicated. Then you've got to try and stick to a limit. Let's say maybe 50 or so, never more than 100 pentads if possible, to make it manageable. And then different sub-projects have different targets. So some will try just to, they call it color the pentad green, where there's 4 or more cards for each pentad. Then you've got enough records. And others will try target all the seasons. So there's the one project, Hessequa sub-project it's called, around Stilbaai, that area. They've been going for, I think it's close to 15 years or longer. And they targeted first to try cover all the pentads and get records for all the pentads. But now they're doing seasonal, and then doing 2-year cycles, looking at different seasons in different years. And so they've now have got trends from that data, so they can see seasonal trends, and it's more monitoring than really just filling pentads. So different sub-projects have different targets. So yeah, you can choose it based on your interest or on your area where you can go assist.
Great, yeah, thanks for that. Shashi Kassan says it's a daunting project for beginners. Is there any scope for pairing with an experienced person, or perhaps a simulation online? Do you have any resources for beginners?
For beginners, yeah. So the YouTube channels, under the resources tab on the website, you can link to YouTube videos, which give you all the there's intro to how to use the BirdLife app, for example. There's introductions on atlasing in general. And then with the bird clubs, if you can get in contact with your local bird club and find out who's atlasing at that bird club, and then join them on one of the atlasing outings, that will help a lot, because you can actually see how they're atlasing, and you can learn from them. So I would recommend trying to join up with somebody. I think we also have a tab that gives you the names of some people that are happy to assist as well. So depending on where they are, of course, but there are names and email addresses of people that are willing to assist new atlases. We don't really have a simulation, but as I said, the videos give you a lot of information about how to get started and what it all involves. And so there's a lot of resources there.
Great, yeah. And also just joining a bird club and going out with some experienced atlases would be another option. So there's a question from Mervyn Wetmore saying, have other countries adopted SABAP? Am I right in thinking this is a unique project developed by South Africa, something we can be very proud of?
Yes, yeah. So it was developed by South Africa, by South Africans, and it has been adopted now for the ABAP, the African Bird Map Project. And it's so far, there are 2 very active countries, Nigeria and Kenya. There's Kenya Bird Map and there's Nigeria Bird Map, and they're bringing in a lot of data for their countries, and that also gets housed at UCT in the database. So all that data feeds through. The ABAP team from various countries and with various organizations involved are working to expand the projects in other countries. So they have got sort of starter projects in, I think it's Senegal, Malawi. They are looking at starting up in, I think, Egypt and Ethiopia soon. So they're trying to expand to all the countries. It is a little difficult because you need a lot of funding to do so and get organizations involved, so it's a bit of a slow process, but it is spreading, and hopefully we'll get a lot of African countries involved so that it becomes this huge project and we get data from all over Africa.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to hear that it is spreading, and hopefully that can continue. On the subject of other African countries, Marty Jasper says, or asks, are you able to nominate a vetter or coordinator for Zambia? He has some unresolved ORFs that have been hanging around for a couple of months now.
Yeah, it's a problem. We don't have anyone for Zambia at this stage, and we've been trying to find people that have expertise on those countries to get involved, but we haven't managed to find anyone for Zambia. So it is a problem. Once we do have, then they will go through all the ORFs, you know, and without you actually submitting the forms, they will do bulk assessments of all the common species. So it's called like second tier vetting process, and then they will eliminate a whole lot of those. So in the end, there'll just be the rarest species that you may have to do ORFs for. But it's only going to happen when we found somebody that is knowledgeable on Zambia and that can help us with that. So, I mean, if anybody knows any expert birders that you think we could approach, that would be very useful. And we can approach them and ask if they're willing to assist.
Yeah, please do get in touch with Tania if you do happen to know anyone. Peter Thompson says that he has a lot of trip cards in BirdLife which have not been submitted to SABAP2. Is it possible to do a bulk upload, or must they all be submitted individually?
They must be done individually. Yeah. So you'll have to go to each and then just click on the menu and then submit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that if you maybe set aside an evening or an afternoon to just go through that admin, it really is important to add the data. So please do try and do that, or maybe do one or two every time you go out birding. This question from Fusi Cry is quite long, so let me just read it out. Given the contribution of the bird data to the development of the species environmental assessment guidelines, is there any developed M&E program to check the effective implementation of guidelines to protect important bird areas against development activities that might have negative impacts? They're talking about an administrative perspective whereby this environmental screening tool will raise a red flag that there's a bird of conservation concern. Do you know anything about that use of the data?
Yeah, I think the data has fed into the screening tool as far as I'm aware, the screening tool on Zambi's biodiversity GIS system. So the data is in there. So it should pick up, the screening should pick up if there are threatened species within that area, yes.
Yeah, I think
so. That is on the biodiversity GIS system of Zambi.
Yeah, I've also heard that, and I do know that the screening tool is used regularly, and it can flag things.
Yeah.
Just looking to see. Penny Abbott, I guess it's more of a comment, but perhaps you can give your thoughts on it, saying it's a little difficult to atlas on a birding trip where they're traversing various pentads, not allowing for full protocol cards. How do you deal with that if you're out birding and atlasing?
Yeah, it is a difficult difficult thing. We found that often if you're birding and you're taking photographs, you know, you may want to move on because you're pursuing the birds and you don't spend enough time in the pentad to get the full protocol. So it is difficult. Yeah, so I don't know, if you with the group, you're going to just focus on the atlasing, it's easier. But yeah, we also have that situation often, so I get quite frustrated if I just missed it. You know, it's been an hour and a half and we could have been there a little bit longer, and now it's an ad hoc, and you know, you really wanted to do a full protocol. It is so you got to try and group your atlases together and the other birders or the photographers together, you know, and if you can, else you do sit with the ad hoc story.
Yeah, Yeah, maybe try and do some, targeted atlas trips versus others that are just more general birding.
Mm.
And then Glenda Williams-Wynn says, Birder is another data collection app, but it does not have a rigorous protocol. Is that data used by SABAP2?
Birder.
Yeah.
I actually don't know much about Birder at all. Yeah, so I can't really help you with that one. I've never really looked at it or anything, so yeah, I unfortunately can't tell you anything about Birder.
Yeah, I've used it very, very briefly, and it does seem to be also more of a almost social app as well, rather than, as Glenda says, a rigorous data collection app. But perhaps that will evolve, and maybe they can build some features in. But yeah, sorry, Glenda, we can't answer your question fully. But yeah, BirdLife and Bindo are great apps. So if you specifically want to do atlasing, so please do have a look at those. I think that is the end of our questions. And yeah, unless anyone else has anything, put it in the Q&A box in the next few seconds. Otherwise, I think we will close out the webinar. Yeah, unless Tania, you have anything that you would like to add?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for listening, and I'm glad you found some of the info useful. And if you need anything further, just ask, I can send you links to the relevant videos or the information you need, or guide you in the right direction so I'm there for your support. Yeah. So do contact me if you need anything.
That's great. I hope you are flooded with lots of queries about people wanting to be new atlases, and I've just put some of the links and Tania's email address in the chat box, so please do make a note of them if you do want to get in touch or go to any of those websites. So yeah, that's it from us tonight. Thank you very much, Tania, for your very informative presentation, and thank you very much to our viewers for joining us for another Conservation Conversations. And please do join us again in 2 weeks' time, where we will be talking all about African penguins. And good night, everyone.
Good night.